a professional adventurer. He's also a best-selling author of Superconductors and Activate Your Life. And he's the creator of the LEAP method and quantum entrepreneurship and so many other things. He founded Adventure Quest Travel, and he's a digital nomad. So today he's going to be talking about taking the leap. And for those of you who are interested in potentially becoming a digital nomad, traveling, especially at this age in time, we just had like an astrology session that talked about the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is all about living in communities. I know some of you guys mentioned in the chat you want to start living in communities. That's the energy of Aquarius. So for the next 200 years, astrologically, our whole society is going to shift into these spaces where we're traveling more and we're kind of living in these communities. So we wanted to bring somebody on here, and the sponsor of this event is NomadX, and they are all about travel. So this is a really special talk for us. And Derek, welcome. You have the whole floor.
All right. Well, hello everybody. This is very exciting. Thank you, Chelsea. Wonderful festival. If you guys have been sitting for a while, I invite you to just stand up and stretch and move a little bit so that you don't get too stuck in one place. Because we're going to be talking about all kinds of exciting, adventurous things. So you may feel you extra adventurous. Also, I'd love to just get a sense of, because I want to make this as valuable for you as possible. When we're thinking about living nomadically, running a business from around the world, being part of communities, all of these things, what do you most want to learn about? What would you like to get today? Because I can kind of take the talk in a variety of directions, depending on what drew you here today and what you're most interested in learning about. So maybe type some of the things that you are most curious about in terms of a digital nomad lifestyle, and let's see if we can address those. So I will just watch the chat here for a moment. And what I'm planning on doing is tell you a little bit about my own leap. So the title of the talk, leaping into a digital nomad lifestyle. Didn't used to be a digital nomad. I've been a digital nomad for 8 years, and have also interviewed and studied several hundred digital nomads. So I have sort of a broad perspective. I coach digital nomads. So I'll tell you a little bit about my own journey, my leap into digital nomadism, and some of the psychology, the mindset, the identity around that. And then I'll give you a bunch of examples of people that are running different types of digital nomad businesses. We're talking about logistics, finding foundations, finding internet, keeping a family moving. Okay. And I noticed right away, some of you are asking about these, logistics, taxes, health insurance. All of those things, I know they might seem like really important to you, and we need to get all this figured out. But those are all the figure outable pieces. Those are just little details. The big picture, yes, from Jessica, the big picture is the identity piece. When you're thinking like a digital nomad, when you're thinking like an adventurer, all of these things just sort of flow naturally. And the little details fall into place. You'll just solve them at some point. And people get caught up in thinking through all the scenarios, thinking through all the different things where they might want to live, or the things that could go wrong, and all these things. Those are just, you're always going to have thoughts like that, probably just coming in, and they're not really that important. The importance is the adventure mindset. So let me I've got some slides here that I want to share with you guys. This will just sort of help as I talk about this stuff. And I'm also going to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. So I'm going to kind of go through this part fairly quickly and try to leave 20 minutes of questions so that if you have specific things, I'll coach you through it or tell you about it, and it'll be something that everybody can benefit from. So here we go. Share screen. All right, do you guys see that, this mask? Yes, okay. This is, so I have I'm usually doing a bunch of different quests at the same time. And this, I was on a quest to find the best mask carver in Bali, and it took me 6 months to find this guy. He happens to be the mayor of the village where all the mask carvers live. But I kept finding people that were better and better and better, because I'm always seeking masters of craft. So wherever I go, I'm seeking indigenous craftsmen who are the best at their craft, not only so I can buy something from them, but so that I can learn how they got so good at what they do. So just a little bit of my history. I used to be a pro cyclist, and then this is the hot spring where I discovered a new species of virus. That's in Yellowstone. That's the hot spring. This was all my possessions that I traveled with for several years. That was where I lived in Bali. Many of you have probably lived in Bali. I think Chelsea, we probably lived in the same place. Okay, and so just real quick overview. And I put this talk together a couple of years ago, so this may be shifting, but here are the top 10 nomad businesses that I see people, the most common that I see people being doing these things. And then I'll get into some examples. So we've got coaching, communities, memberships, course creators, journalists, authors, people creating physical products, Amazon, got digital products, events, online events like this one, amazing, or in-person events when we can do it. Keynote speaking, various types of speaking and training, ads such as in podcasts and YouTube, being an affiliate, you can sell other people's courses and products. The creative side of things, that's the photographers, the videographers, the Instagrammers. And I also see, people that are doing day trading, for example, or crypto. We've got a lot of pro athletes, investors, people that buy either Airbnbs or other property types things. So these are some of the common ways to make money while traveling. So this was my first podcast. It ran for 7 years, where I studied adventure and business. And that evolved to the Loudermilk show, which is what I'm currently running, which has adventure and business plus metaphysics, science, and spirituality all rolled in. So if you want to check that out, you can get that anywhere for free. Adventure Quest is the adventure trips I lead for entrepreneurs. And I actually started Adventure Quest because I was given a mission by a 1,000-year-old magic tree deep in the jungles. And they said, you need to take leaders and entrepreneurs out into nature and teach them out there. So I had to listen. I had to start this adventure trip. So we climb volcanoes and we have bonfires on the beach. And this is just, so once I started having kids, right, work balance becomes even more complex and complicated. I've tested out almost all of those top 10 businesses so that I can teach them. So I've done podcasting, I've written books, YouTube, done retreats, created online courses, created, physical products, all these things just to test them out so that I can better understand how they work and teach them. So this is the first book I wrote. We've written several more books, currently filming online courses. I took the material from the book, created a course from it. So the work was already done. Not sure why this is in there. This is just from the market in Bali. So we tried being influencers. We did the whole Instagram influencer thing. This is my wife. So this was us. We were on hot air ballooning in Napa Valley, and just getting free stuff, cool trips, luxury eco lodges, staying at funky little places. We stayed in luxury hotels all around the world. This one's in Langkawi in Malaysia. So we played around. We tried all this stuff out. Some of it we're still doing. Obviously, I'm still doing the podcast, still working on books, still coaching, and some of it I'm not really, doing the Instagram thing so much anymore. And some of it you can come back to, right? You could be an influencer for a while and stop and then come back if you want. So because I've tried all these things, I developed a method for training digital nomads. What do you need to know to be a successful digital nomad entrepreneur? And I've been running a mastermind for thought leaders, essentially digital nomads, in the teaching healing space for the last few years. We created this method, the LEAP method, which is partly ties into the talk that we're giving today. But these are the most important components that I see to be a successful digital nomad entrepreneur. We've got these, the Thought Leaders MBA. That's the part where, that's the business side of things. You need to know marketing. You need to know your customers. You need to know sales. You need to know all these elements that make you succeed on the business side. You need to know metaphysics. You need to understand the laws of the universe so that you're working with them. And everything is much easier when you when you work with the laws of the universe. So that includes your intuition, your subconscious mind. I heard the previous speaker talking about brainwave states. This is all really important stuff as well. So the adventure mindset, that's another key piece. That's what lets you do something that's never been done before. That's what really lets you live essentially in 5D instead of 3D. And we'll talk a little bit more about the adventure mindset. And I've studied, right, hundreds of adventurers. I'm writing a book about the psychology and philosophy of adventure. And I've distilled that down into what is the adventure mindset. And then finally, the last part is, how do you become the best in the world at what you're doing? Peak performance. So this is taken from my study of pro athletes. You're optimizing your physical biology, you're optimizing your learning, you're optimizing what's going to really make the difference for you to set you apart so that you're the only one in your business. You're like a niche of one. You're the leader in your field because you created the field. So that's kind of what the peak performance side is about. All right, so this is text heavy here, but some things that I've noticed among all great adventurers, and I've seen adventurers are some of the most confident people in the world. And so these are some of the elements that I've seen hold true for them. Skill acquisition, they're great at learning. They're great at learning fast. They're great at learning things from technical stuff to languages to navigation, all of these things. And I'm talking more about like expeditionary adventurers, but digital nomads, because you're traveling, there's so much of this skill. And when you layer business on top of it, when you layer lifestyle, trying to curate your ideal lifestyle on top of just simply traveling and business, it gets, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. But so these are just some of the main themes. The adventure mindset in terms of relationships, that you're going to be able to build relationships quickly. You're going to be able to make friends. If you drop down in a new country, you're confident you can make friends, you can ask for help, you're good at creating support systems. Even when you move from country to country, you have support systems from people you've met before. You're good at starting new business relationships, new collaborative relationships. We talk about the mental aspect of the adventure mindset. And when I say adventure mindset, you could call this the digital nomad mindset if you want. So resilience, building resilience, how you deal with all these things that get thrown at you, whether it's customer annoyance or bad weather or getting stranded somewhere. I've even had friends, they've been attacked by native tribes people. Um, and so all this stuff is, you never know what you're gonna deal with. So you have mental toughness, and adaptability is another part here. Resourcefulness, if your boat collapses, right, you need to lash it together so you can sail across the Pacific, all these things. This is your flexibility, your willingness to abandon plan A, B, and C and go with plan F. So I talk about, yes, it's emotional resilience. So there's emotional intelligence, but there's also, in challenging situations, how you can keep moving even though your emotional state is not ideal. And this can be within challenging conversations, difficult conversations. The adventure mindset is also about self-expression, speaking your truth, having your personal power, knowing who you are. And sometimes, right, that identity develops or it goes away. As you progress through an adventure, your identity changes. That's one of the key elements of adventure. Actually, in adventure, there's usually some element of risk. There's usually a good story that comes with it, and there's usually a shaping of identity. And adventure transforms your identity. Part of the adventure mindset is your physical body, keeping a high energetic state, having endurance. And endurance is simply being able to do hard things, even though you want to stop. It's about being aware of your surroundings. It's about being awake and present. Another aspect is social competence. When you get in new cultures, new situations, how do you understand nonverbal communication? How do you engage with people? How do you know what's polite and what's not polite? The nuances and the understanding of people and observing people and being able to integrate within a community structure, which also means we have some awareness of body language, our appearance, our posture, what our clothes and language and all these things are saying about us. And then in general, our actions, are we doing things that are in congruence with our values, with our purpose? So just being aware of how we make decisions and what we're actually doing, because these are separate, right? The doingness usually comes from the beingness. If we're being an adventurer, if we're being a digital nomad, then all these things just sort of fall into place from there. So let me see if I can let me see how I can get to the chat here. I just want to take a pause and see how all this is landing with you guys before I get into the examples. So let me stop sharing for a second. Okay, flexibility. World. Feeling. Focus on the feeling. Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, how's this landing with you guys? And Tony's just posted a link in there. That's my calendar. I'll just mention this now. Because you guys are here at my talk today, I've opened up some spots on my calendar. If you have a digital nomad business, or if you're looking to start one, I'm happy to give you a free session, a half-hour strategy session with me at some point. I probably have room for about 5 or so in the next week. So that's just sort of a gift to you guys. You can use that link, pop on there, and I'll send you a sort of an application just to have some questions, so I know where you're coming from, what you're working with, and that kind of thing. So I think he'll post the link maybe 1 or 2 times. So yeah, we can move on to some examples now. If you guys want to hear about different digital nomads that I've met, that I've traveled with, they sort of represent different ways you could approach being a digital nomad. let me go back into my screen share here. And this is kind of important. So we have the opportunity as digital nomads, as entrepreneurs, to really lead the way in shifting from 3D thinking to 5D. This whole ascension that we're experiencing. Essentially, people have done business in a very linear way. People have their careers, and they have approached them as like you work your way up the ladder. You do these things, and then you get this result. In 5D, because there is no time, you really have such a tremendous opportunity as an entrepreneur with non-linear progress. You can make huge festivals. You can make huge festivals happen in the blink of an eye. Things can come together, and so we have this boxed in frame of thinking in 3D, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This stepwise thing. You could think of 5D as sort of simultaneity. Everything you want could happen all at once, or it could expand exponentially, like the Fibonacci spiral. So, what's important here is getting really good at your discernment, knowing what feels good and what doesn't feel good, knowing how you make decisions, tapping into things beyond more than just your thoughts. And so I mentioned this about, don't get caught up in thinking about taxes or finding a place to live or all of these details. Really, we want you to not worry about so much the thinking aspect, but who do you need to be a successful digital nomad? And partly that's trusting yourself and being able to. I mentioned the unconscious, superconscious mind, getting wisdom and advice from the collective unconscious, your higher self, all these things. So it's a great opportunity to start living in 5D. Being a digital nomad kind of helps you break out of a box of traditional thinking. All right, so here we go, adventurous businesses. So let me just tell you, when I started being a digital nomad, I had just read the 4-Hour Workweek, and I started a business, which was because I used to be a pro cyclist. I started a business coaching people who wanted to be pro cyclists. So these were largely university cyclists. And I said, I'm going to go to a low cost of living country. So I picked Vietnam, and I estimated my cost of living to be $1,000 a month. So I took on 4 clients for $250 each to get 1,000. And so basically I was at a wash. I was at basically had 1,000 coming in, 1,000 going out. Basically an infinite runway to learn business, to study business, to figure out what direction I wanted to go. And since then, I was coaching cycling, and then I started a podcast, and I was coaching podcasts, and then that sort of evolved into coaching business. And so this is coaching has developed from sports to many different aspects now. And all right, so here's some examples. So, all right, click. There we go. The first type, we can talk about the athletes, the people that are doing, traditionally just traveling around. They have sponsorships. These are all people that I've interviewed, by the way. So this is Jeff Shapiro. He does rock climbing, paraglider racing, and various other things. And so he's just relying largely on sponsorships to fund his business. This is Sean Conway. He's kind of more of a world record setter. He has many like farthest, first, fastest. He's the fastest person to bike across Europe. He did it in 28 days straight last year, sleeping 4 hours a day. And he is doing public speaking. He's written books, and he also has sponsorships. This is Johan Ernst Nilsson, and he built his career as a polar explorer and a mountaineer, but he's more of a philanthropist now. And he makes usually a big chunk of money taking a group of CEOs or celebrities into the wilderness. He takes CEOs to Everest Base Camp. But then he spends most of his time raising money. I think he raised $8 million last year, donated $8 million through his different adventure trips. So he's more of an activist, and because when he was skiing to the North Pole, he saw the ice caps melting, and he said, we really need to do something about this. And so he used his fame as an explorer to become an activist. Paul Kuthi is a pro kayaker, and he's the one who invented sea kayak surfing. So how to basically use your kayak as a surfboard, but he has basically a flow state coaching business that he does as well. This is Dave Cornthwaite. He set multiple world records, and he's on a major quest to do 25 expeditions of 1,000 miles or more, each with a different sort of non-motorized human-powered transport. But he runs a festival called the Yestival. He has a new farm where he has people come and stay with him. He does talks. He runs a book club. A lot of things that came out of building community around his adventures. Here's him. What is this? Sail tricycling across the Chilean desert is that one. Okay, this is Oliver White. Oliver is the one in the blue hat. He starts fishing eco lodges in conjunction with indigenous populations around the world to help them do sustainable fishing industries, because it's a easy luxury travel thing to start up, and it can really sort of fund sustainability so he's done it in Guyana, he's done it in Nepal, different communities around the world. Now this guy, I just love him. This is Mike Spencer Bound. He's been doing the digital nomad thing since before computers. He's been traveling full time for 35 years. So he was actually around before people were digital nomads, and he essentially would travel with large amounts of cash and find opportunities to buy things. And my favorite story of his is that he found these people in Java in Indonesia cutting down coffee trees, and they were just going to burn all the wood. And he said, "Hey, can I just buy that wood from you?" And he had this idea. He took a huge container ship full of coffee wood, shipped it, one island over to Bali, and they made these beautiful hand-carved coffee tables out of coffee wood. And then he went to the furniture wholesalers in North America, and he sold them all, all these coffee tables made of coffee wood. And he ended up making $800,000 on this single deal. And that was enough for him to travel for 6 years. And so he would just look for these random opportunities to make money. But he was just a very freestyle traveler. He's the most traveled man in history. He's been to every country like 25 times or something like that. Pretty wild. Okay, now we're getting into the authors. Carl Hoffman studied indigenous tribes and the history of cannibalism. He also studied weird types of transportation. Jana Lenin is one of my personal mentors. He walked across the Himalayas and wrote a book about it, and now he's getting a PhD in the study of walking and meditation. David Quammen, he basically he's a journalist, and he joins scientific expeditions all around the world and covers cutting edge science. So he's an author. This is Chris McDougall. He's an author. He wrote Born to Run. He goes and sort of lives with native tribes around the world to find out how they run, how they have unlimited endurance, how they sort of can forage for things. And so he's studying sort of peak performance through native peoples around the world. All right, this is another journalist. She has a podcast, Shelby Stanger. Her show is Wild Ideas Worth Living. And she is also she used to work for Rolling Stone, and she's a professional surfer as well. This is Gunnar Garforce. He's the first person he's the fastest person to go to every country in the world twice. It only took him, I think it took him 4 years. he's kind of interesting. He does speaking and journalism, but he's also full-time. He's just a TV host. So he just travels on the weekends usually. He's from Norway. And the thing, I met him at a festival like this a few years ago. He doesn't get tired. That's the thing about him, is he has just this weird genetic predisposition. He just can go forever. So he was like the last one partying, the first one up, most energetic guy. These guys run, they have, so Travis and Jason, Zero to Travel, Location Indie, they run a community for location independent entrepreneurs. Jackie does this as well. She's kind of an athlete influencer. She runs a group. This is Jackie Nurse. Chase Beringer, actually, so I wanted Chase is in here. So just a couple weeks ago, and I see Chelsea smiling, Chase was going to be giving this talk. And Chase is essentially a digital nomad as well. Right now, he's in the middle of setting a couple world records for volcano boarding, fastest speed records, descending down a volcano on a sort of a modified, it's like a surfboard with a metal bottom. He has to go more than 60 miles an hour. But anyway, he's in the middle of doing that. So this great opportunity came up for me to deliver this talk. So Chase is he not only sets world records, but he also runs a business leading adventure trips for people. That's his main business, corporate trips and private trips. So that's how he makes a living as a digital nomad. Matt Pryor runs Adventure X. That's also adventure trips. Rachel Rudwall is an adventure TV producer, and she's also a host, so she's on both sides of the camera. Sarah Dandashi is a travel influencer. She's a top-rated hotel concierge that sort of gives you an inside scoop on travel behind the scenes. Debbie Archangelis runs a community and a podcast. She helps sort of match people. This is kind of interesting. She helps match people that need things done with the people that can deliver them. So the VAs and the coaches and stuff. So she's got a whole community that helps everyone grow their business. Sarah's really interesting. She built a community on Instagram, learned how that all worked, and then was training people how to build communities on Instagram. But really, at heart, she was an artist. So she sort of gave away her business, learned how to do TikTok, and now she's selling paintings on TikTok. So she's reinvented herself since I met her. Andy is just a professional adventure photographer. He gets picked up by boards of tourism or companies around the world, and he just goes and takes pictures for them on adventure trips. This is when he was just in college. I knew him from university days, and this was his first main feature. That I think was first time he was featured in National Geographic. Danny Flood does marketing, and he teaches people market hacking. Patricia Parkinson is she's a polymath. She does everything from blockchain to art installations to building communities, all kinds of stuff. She's a startup founder. So there's room to do a bunch of different things. This guy, what's his name? He took his whole company on the road. They were basically a software company that migrated software for large corporations, and he and two of his employees rented this vehicle and sort of drove all around Africa and South America and just worked sort of by satellite uplink for a few hours a day, and they were adventuring and making a TV series the rest of the time. This is Casey Fenton. He's the founder of Couchsurfing. He's the sort of the guy that originally created. He needed a place to stay with people for free, so he created Couchsurfing, and that started this whole wave of staying with people for free, a decade ago. He's also the one who pioneered, how do we build trust online? How do we know we can trust somebody to stay in our house? because I don't want to have some weirdo come and stay with me. So he built this sort of online review system that Uber and Airbnb and Yelp and everything is based on these days. You can actually read these reviews and sort of build trust and understand who someone is before you meet them. And I see that we've got like 18 minutes left, so I just want to race through the last ones of these. Chris Gilliblow, he's known for being an author. I think he writes a book a year, but he's been to every country. These two, they were a couple. They started off with a health newsletter, a daily health tip, and then they sold physical products from there. And now they sort of moved into talking more about EMF protections and how to deal with things like that. Airbnb investor who has a podcast. This is Jasper Rivers. And this is Jeremy Moon. He invented Icebreaker Merino clothing and sort of runs this large outdoor gear manufacturer remotely as he travels. He's like perhaps the most famous entrepreneur in New Zealand currently. Anyway, okay, so let me stop sharing there, and then we can. Great. Now we can move into just questions, and that's a bunch of examples. So I'm sure I've flooded you with too many to even keep track of, but maybe the one that seems most similar to what you like is getting the gears turning, is giving you some ideas of how this can be possible. So maybe you can give us a list of all those. Yeah, I do actually have a PDF that I put together a couple of years ago that I can forward people for sure. Also, all these folks have been guests on my podcast. So if there's someone you want to learn more about in depth, just go listen to that episode, and because I'll be asking them questions about not just their lifestyle, but also their business. What are the details of how they run their business? How did they grow it? Things like that. Have I studied any musicians? Ekariza asks. No, a lot of people are sort of musicians on the side, but I haven't studied any. Some of the people actually I've studied serve musicians. So teaching artists how to market themselves, or they're hosting events, concert curators, but I haven't actually talked to that many musicians. Let me go back through. The guy's name who built Couchsurfing is Casey Fenton. Yeah. Someone says, how does this work with COVID since travel is restricted? We just had a guy come stay with us for 2 months, a digital nomad friend. He came from Indonesia to New York to St. Louis, and now he's moved on to Mexico. So, he's still doing it. A lot of other people are still doing it just like normal. But obviously, if your passport has travel restrictions on it, which Americans now, we used to be totally free, and now we're constrained more. You may just have more trouble getting to places if your passport has restrictions. Okay. All right. I'd love to, if anyone has any more complex questions that they don't want to post in the chat, or if anybody wants to open up on audio and ask a question, we've got 14 minutes left for questions.
I'd love to just comment something if that's okay.
Sure.
I don't think I have a question yet. So I'm Caro, my pronouns are she, her, and this presentation was so amazing, really helpful. I liked learning about all the different people and the ways to make money, because I think a lot of people get tripped up on that. And so I'm a CPA and I don't really practice anymore. So I used to do accounting, and everyone always asks taxes, health insurance. Honestly, the rule of thumb I see is less than 3 months in a place, you don't pay taxes. And if you want good tax advice, you have to pay for it. And CPAs and tax professionals are expensive. So if you ask that question, just be prepared. The more money you invest in a professional, the better quality advice and the more money you could potentially save. So That's something I see a lot. And my health insurance, it wasn't that bad globally. It was like $350 a month just to buy it privately. And now it's like $50 a month through the state. So health insurance isn't that hard either. So
Thank you.
that's my share. And thank you so much again. This is so great.
Yeah, thank you. And I also just want to mention a friend of mine, the Nomad Capitalist. He's got 1,200 videos on YouTube and a couple thousand blog posts about specifically optimizing your taxes, your residencies, your passports. And as you make more and more money, the US tax rate and many of these European tax rates is quite high. You can end up saving $50,000, $100,000, $1 million a year if you optimize your taxes. So first, have a business, get it off the ground, start, making your living as a nomad, and then you can optimize some of these things like how do you, where's your company based, so that you don't pay more taxes to a government than you want. The Nomad Capitalist, Andrew Henderson. Yes. Great. Anybody else have a question or?
Hey, this is Chris. I have a question about, like, because you said most musicians that you've talked to have something they do on the side for making music, and I currently have something that I do on the side, and it's funny because it's also related to science, and you had like a science and tech background, and then I think you kind of shifted into another direction that might have been more aligned for your digital nomad lifestyle. And I kind of want to do the same thing, but I think my biggest issue is deciding what it is that I would want to do to make money on the side. Because I feel like there's so many things you can do. You can teach courses, you can teach people, you could start a podcast, you could start a YouTube channel, you could, the list goes on and on and on. But I think my biggest struggle is figuring, like, kind of detaching from what I'm currently doing and investing time and energy, into my passions more. And I guess I'm wondering if you might have a process for deciding or discovering that or figuring out what that is.
Yeah, no, fantastic question. And if you don't have something which you're already like, I know my passion, I know my purpose in life, it can be sort of intimidating because everyone's like, well, just find your purpose and then just do that and you'll never work a day in your life. So it's like, oh, obviously. But when I'm coaching people, I want them to have safety in many areas so that they can feel free to experiment in other areas. So that means whether it's a day job or some sort of financial and social security, so that you're able to, let's say there's like a few different types of businesses you want to try, you can go and you can, spend 6 months trying a business without having to worry that is going to have to bring in income. And the analogy I use is like, if you're swinging through the jungle on one vine, you reach out and you grab the next vine. And at some point you're holding on to both vines, right? This is your old sort of way of earning a living. This is your old lifestyle and this is your new lifestyle. And at some point you're holding on to both, and then you let go of this one and then you swing forward on the next one. And so there's a certain amount of testing, experimentation you need to do to find out, is this really what I want to be doing to earn a living? And you might try coaching, or you might build a community and just be like, it's not really for me. And I've had clients that pivot, that drop their businesses halfway through, and that's okay. So partly it's like, you can't know what it's going to be like until you do it. So you sort of have to experiment and also build in safety. Like the best entrepreneurs, like Richard Branson, he's able to take these risks by minimizing the downside. So for example, he started Virgin Airlines and he was able to buy a 747, his first fleet, I think, from Boeing. And he worked into the contract that he could sell them all back at the same price that he paid. if it didn't work out after a year. And so he actually built into the start of his business a fail safe, like I can give this up for no risk and go back to what I was doing if it's not going well after a year. So, just being an experimenter, but also trying to build in safety, if that helps. Good question.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. I really resonate with that and think that the like having the safety net, first of all, but second of all, I'm such an experimenter. So I think that's one of my superpowers is experimenting and learning. And so, yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Who else has a question or comment that they want to get answered? This is your chance. Ask anything you want.
How many countries have you been nomadic in?
Yeah, thanks, Chelsea. I personally like to travel quite slowly and integrate in a community, so I know the person at the cafe down the street and I can say, I'll have the usual, please. And they know exactly how I like my coffees. And, so there's a point when you get somewhere and you're just trying to figure everything out. So that's generally sort of wasted time in terms of it's not super productive. You don't have friendships yet. So we would travel every sort of 3 months. So with my family, I think we did 12 countries as a family, moving every 3 months. And then before that, I think maybe 20 or 25 or so countries before that when I was single, moving a little bit more quickly because when you move with kids, there's so much more stuff. You're sort of dragging them along with you to some extent. So we would use this website called Nomad List to sort of start our creative juices flowing. Like, where would we want to live? Do we want to live on the Dalmatian coast? We lived in Croatia, which was one of our favorite places. We lived also in Portugal. And sometimes you just, like when I talk about non-linear things, manifesting or getting the right opportunities to come to you, sometimes you just sort of start with, how do I want to feel? And an opportunity pops up. Someone says, hey, I have a house. It's a surf town in Portugal. You can stay at my house. Oh, that's easy decision. And then you find out 25 of your friends are already there. Great. We moved to Budapest because of a festival like this one. Our friend said, hey, we're going to be having this festival for digital nomads. Do you want to speak? And I said, well, why don't we just move there? And then we'll, I'll speak, but then we get to experience Budapest. So Chelsea says beach house in Portugal is a sponsor. Yeah. But yeah, Portugal is a super hot spot. The hot spots like Bali and Thailand and Portugal are that for a reason. They have a lot of really nice things and they're not too expensive. And I'm also asking people, where should we go next? What do you recommend? Should we go to South Africa? Is it worth going to? What do you think of Malaysia? What do you think of Kuala Lumpur? Places like that. So yeah, just asking people for advice, or when you're going to move to a place, who do I know in Germany? Who do I know in Ireland when you're going there? And you can start to build your community before you're even there. And I know the Nomad X speaker is going to be talking more about building community as a digital nomad, which is really important. And so his talk will be a great pair with this one.
I have one more question.
One more question.
About, yeah, well, maybe we could take a couple more. But I just have a question. So you said you traveled to all these countries with your kids. So as you're traveling, I don't know how old your kids are, but are they in school and are they building community as well? And how does their integration process? Because this is like, I'm getting texts from people all over the world. Like, I think people just know that I've been traveling a lot. So like, I have families and mothers like, hey, I want to, start this nomadic life. How is it with kids? I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to answer that. But I know that's like a really big question.
Yeah. And essentially the reason I'm here in St. Louis is there was this moment when we were in Portugal and we lived right next to a school, and these kids were playing at an elementary school, and these kids are playing out on the playground. My kids are 2 and 4. And my 4-year-old, he was 3 at the time, and he saw the kids playing outside, and he said, "Can I go play with them? That'll be amazing. Like, I just want to have these friends." And I was like, "Okay, let's go see if we can like get you into this school for 3 months." And uh, I asked 4 or 5 different people in a bunch of different ways, like, how can we make this happen? How can we get our kid into this school? And they're like, "No, you have to have Portuguese residencies, or you have to be here for a year." It's very hard for me because he just wanted to play with these kids, and they were just on the other side of the fence, and we just couldn't get him across the fence to do it. So I've enrolled him in a school here in St. Louis, and he's doing amazing. So my plan is largely do digital nomadism in the off season, in the summertime, and then the winter break, and then do like a gap year or 2 around middle school. So have a chance to build long-term friendships in one place as a kid, which you can't go back and build old friends. Like, so I want to give him that opportunity to build some solid friendships as a kid, then travel before high school, then maybe do high school in one place and then travel some more. So yeah, kind of trying to give opportunities for both experiencing the world, but also continuity of friendships. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Amazing. Thanks. Yeah. I think we still have time for another question if anyone has a burning question, especially if someone is really considering doing this. This is definitely your chance to just ask these questions.
Yeah, and if you if you want more personalized support with this, if you already have a business and you want to try to figure out how to really grow it or really improve your reach, that's the type of person that should book a free session with me. Or if you simply are like you're ready to take a leap and start the business, you could also book a call with me. There's you'll be able to scroll in the chat for the link.
In that, is it a friends chat that you would want us to book?
You've already looked. That would be just pick a strategy session.
Okay, cool.
It'll be called a strategy. There's a few different categories on that link, but yeah, a business strategy session, and we'll go from there.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, Tiffany.
I have a question. What about if you're working for somebody and it's like a really amazing opportunity and so forth, and that employer offers you the opportunity to work remote? What type of digital nomadry? Obviously, the framework of being committed to a single company rather than my own obviously can be a hindrance. But I'd love to hear any examples of people that have successfully pulled that off.
Yeah, and I was always actually surprised when I would run into people that didn't have their own business. But obviously this year is totally different because everyone realizes they can work remotely now. And so, digital nomadism is going to blow up. There's not really much difference other than you have to sort of work within the constraints of, their schedule or their requests of you. But you can work in co-working spaces. You can live in the co-living spaces just like everybody else. It might even be like the previous person's question. It might even feel safer to get started because you can sort of rely on somebody paying you for a while. So yeah, I think the travel side of things and the living situation and building community are all essentially the same things you would have to deal with, whether you're employing yourself or somebody else is employing you. Yeah.
So good.
Thank you.
Amazing. Awesome. Great question, Michael. And thank you everybody for asking all of these questions. This was such an awesome talk, so different than any of the other talks, but so needed, especially with the situation in the world that we're in right now and where we're kind of headed as a society. This feels so relevant. And I don't know if a lot of these conversations are being had. If they are, I haven't really seen that many of them, but yeah, thank you so much, Derek, for being here and having this talk with us. If you guys don't want to take yourselves off mute, let's give Derek some love.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Great audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsea, for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Amazing. All right. So we have a